Man, how about Eduardo Escobar? 44 fantasy points for the Mets against the Padres last night. 4 hits, the dinger, 6 RBI, 3 runs scored. A top 10 DraftKings performance by a hitter this season. 11th cycle in Mets history. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good. Welcome into the Sweat. Adam Kaufman here with you. We're going to talk baseball. We're going to go NHL playoffs. We'll get to golf, the LIV. If you haven't heard of it, we'll tell you a little bit about it. But of course, NBA playoffs. We're going to dive right in because we are on the eve of Game 3 of the NBA Finals featuring the Celtics and Warriors. It's coming to the Garden. Should be a good time, obviously. Nick Whalen, RotoWire, Nick Fryer, DraftKings contributor, both joining us here. Welcome in, boys. It's good to see you, obviously. And hey, it's a best of 5 at this point, so technically the Celtics have taken over home court advantage, which is a good thing. Tied at 1, Boston, the C's, now minus 115 favorites to take home the title. Do you agree with these odds, Nick? We start with you.
Which Nick?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you know what? You know what? Take your pick. I guess that's right. It's a strictly last name segment. Fryer, go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Fryer,
so look, I like it at 115, minus 115 right now, but at the same time, I do think that the Celtics are going to lose home court advantage in Boston. I think it's going to go 1-1 again here. So I think if you want to move on it now at 115, sure, I do think the Celtics are going to win this series, the NBA Finals. I've been saying in 7 for them since the jump. But at the same time, I think you can also wait a little bit, wait until we get past Game 4. You might be able to get them at underdogs, even though it might be slight underdogs.
How you feel about that, Whalen?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see a back and forth series that, the odds are probably going to, kind of reverse seemingly game to game. Based on the results. It's interesting, though. The series is 1-1. A lot of people are expecting it to go 6 or 7. And yes, you could technically say, Boston did kind of steal home court by taking Game 1 in Golden State. But, Golden State has the potential Game 7 on its home court, and yet Boston is still favored. And I think that says a lot about what the odds makers think of the Boston Celtics. I think we saw 2 really uniquely competitive games. I think in games 1 and 2 that, the final score looked a little more lopsided, certainly, than most of the game was. And I think Boston bounces back in Game 3 at home. I think the Celtics actually played pretty well through the first half, obviously got blitzed a little bit during that third quarter. Kind of a reversal of what we saw in Game 1, where it felt like Golden State controlled most of the game and then got blitzed in the fourth. But that's been the story, really, of the playoffs, especially for Boston, where it feels like 75% of the game goes one way, 25% of the game completely throws off the outcome.
Whalen, if you still had the mustache, it'd be a lot easier to tell you guys apart. But, hey, you just teased it, so let's stick with it. The Celtics plus 135, or actually just plus 135 in general, on this series either going 6 or 7 games. So you believe it's going to be a long series. I think it's going to be a long series. What do you think? How does this play out?
Well, the mustache is a touchy subject right now, so thank you for pointing that out. I have a wedding coming up this week. I was convinced by multiple parties that it wasn't professional. So
don't listen to those people. You can always consult with me.
Yeah, thank you. I need to get like a green screen mustache or something just for these hits. But yeah, I mean, it's not the most appealing number. If you're looking to bet that right now, I think I would maybe go on the DraftKings Sportsbook, and if you navigate over to the finals markets, there's like a million bets out there. But you could bet on the series correct score. So. If you think the Celtics are going to win in 6, you can get that at plus 260. If you think the Celtics are going to win in 7, you can get that, at 5-1. And conversely, if you think Golden State's going to win in 7, you got that at plus 270. Like, you're getting better odds, I think, on those specific results. And obviously, you're narrowing, your path of outcome. But that's where I'm looking right now. And at this point, I don't think there's really any evidence to support that this is not going to go 6 or 7.
Fryer, we're a best of 5 right now. You expect at least 4 more?
Yeah, I thought the Celtics were going to win this one in 7 from the jump, so I think Whalen makes a great point about 5-1 taking the Celtics there. But I still like when you say a team is going to win in 7 games, of course that means that you think the other team could possibly sneak it out and end up winning it all. So I think getting the series to go 7 games at plus 135, I still like that still. So I think that as much as you're not getting a ton of value like Whalen was highlighting with some of the correct series score, correct series outcome, I still think this is a decent one to take at 7 games because I don't think this goes 6. Like, the NBA sometimes gets involved a little bit, whether or not it's obvious or not is another question. But I think they'll make sure this goes to 7 if nothing else.
What are you saying about Zach Zarba?
I don't know what you're talking about. No,
look, Finals MVP in the East, okay? East Finals MVP last round. It was very clearly going to be either Jason Tatum or Jimmy Butler. This case, it feels like Steph Curry or Jason Tatum, depending obviously on the winner of the series. You look at the odds right there. Curry is even money plus 100, Tatum plus 115 right behind him. Bearded Nick, is there a long shot you like for MVP?
Yeah, I mean, if we're trying to break it down and figure out who's one of those long guys to get it, I'm looking at either Derek White or Marcus Smart. Derek White, of course, the significantly longer shot. But when you look at those two guys, those are guys who, if they're gonna slow down Steph Curry in this series, it's gonna be those two guys that you're gonna be focusing on quite a bit. At least the voters are going to be focusing on too, because that's the other thing we've got to keep in mind too. It's not just about player performance. We also got to consider what are the voters, like what do they value in terms of narrative and things like that. So with White, I think if you're looking for a crazy long shot, okay, go for it. But I think Marcus Smart is the better bet of the two, because the theatrics with this guy and how he's able to bounce back and everything like that, he has a lot going for him. And I know he just had a rough game. That's where it's like, White has been consistent the first two games offensively. Smart is going to have this. I'm expecting to have a bounce back game in game 3. So there's a little bit, you can go either way with these two guys. Smart is definitely the preferred option for me, but those are the two long ones right now.
Waylon, tell me why the answer is Al Horford.
Well, Al Horford, I believe, was 90-1 to win Finals MVP going into Game 1. So I would feel a little dirty, taking him at 10-1 now on the DK Sportsbook if you weren't able to grab him at 90. But I think Nick's on the right track that it has to be somebody with the Celtics. Through 2 games, I am extremely convinced that if the Warriors win the series, it's going to be Steph Curry for a number of reasons. One, he's been more aggressive than we've seen from him in the past on these stage. He's been their best player, clearly. Like, there's really no one else who holds a candle to him through 2 games. And 2, he has the narrative that he hasn't won one yet. I think that's going to work in his favor. Kind of a lifetime achievement, Finals MVP, if you will. That will also likely be deserved. It's not like Klay Thompson has lit the world on fire. Draymond was awful in Game 1. Like, there's just really no one else for Golden State. With Boston, it's interesting that Tatum is still, such a heavy favorite, because I thought he was outright awful in Game 1. They still win despite that. He was okay in Game 2, but he's still plus 125. His odds have really not shifted all that much. So there's kind of this belief that if Boston wins the series, it's going to be Jason Tatum. If I had to bet on a long shot, I guess it would be Horford at 10-1, just because there's still that memory of what he did in Game 1. I thought he was their best overall player in Game 1. Completely disappeared in Game 2, but let's say they come back and win Game 3 tomorrow night. Al Horford goes for 20 and 15. All of a sudden, that's kind of fresh in the mind again. Like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, those guys need to be a little more consistent. With Horford, all you're looking for maybe is like 2 or 3 standout games, and maybe he goes off in a Game 7. And if Jason Tatum has had just a good, not great series, potentially there's some kind of recency bias in that result if Horford finishes off the series with a big game. So he's the guy, I guess, I could imagine doing that the most, but it really feels like it's going to be Tatum or Curry.
A lot of talk about the series overall that we've been doing here, guys. Why don't we actually talk about Game 3, though? Again, that's in Boston tomorrow night. And with the Celtics at plus 3.5 favorites, Waylon, going into this game, I would also be remiss and ignoring my Celtics bias if I didn't also tell you the Celtics are 6-0 this postseason, coming off a loss. What are the expectations? How do you like that number?
Thank you for acknowledging the Celtics bias.
Of course.
I see the tweets. They're often informative, but often one-sided.
Very.
It does feel like this series is just going to be like whatever team's at home is going to be favored by somewhere between 2.5 and 4 points. And the home court is kind of going to swing it. It feels to me like Boston, maybe kind of after they stole Game 1, I would certainly, they were not okay losing Game 2, but I think they kind of realized what their fate was going to be in the third quarter and said, all right, let's not overextend ourselves. Let's get back home and let's win at least one, if not both, of these next 2 games. So I think they're confident. I don't think they're shaken at all by what happened in that third quarter against Golden State. And I expect a more focused effort from the Boston Celtics. I think even early in Game 2, I thought Boston was going to come out and maybe control most of Game 2. The way that they played early on, Jaylen Brown was like 4 for 4, I think, to open the game. And then that kind of wore off. I think at home, that you can kind of extend that level of play a little bit longer. Crowd is going to be completely juiced up for this one. So I like Boston. I think to jump back out and take back control of this series, I think we're 2-1 heading into Game 4 on Friday night.
Yeah, Nick, I think Brown went like 2 of 14 the rest of the way after that hot start.
It looked like he was going to go for 50.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous, and then totally calmed down, obviously. Fryer, we know, especially with like a week and a half between games, there's no momentum between these things. So how do you like the number at 3.5 here for this game?
Yeah, look, I know we talk a lot about stats when we're trying to break things down and everything, but when we get to the postseason, there are some intangibles that I do kind of take into account, which is why I like the Celtics again to cover as home favorites on Wednesday. The thing is, like, Jason Tatum has been such a steady voice throughout the entire postseason, as much as you have Ime Udoka, who's been that way throughout the entirety of since the regular season. Tatum does not get phased when he has these down games. He does not get phased when his team loses. At least he doesn't seem to admit that at all. And they've shown with their results, like you said, Adam, like 6-0 after losses in the postseason. At some point, you would think that would go away, but at the same time, this is a team that's making a title run right now, so they could easily continue to run that. I think they will, because you have that consistent voice both within Tatum and Udoka, and then defensively and offensively, they're such a remarkably versatile team. You can have anybody, contributing offensively on a given night, and of course defensively, they are well equipped to cover this Warriors team, which is why they've gotten to this point.
Nick, it's not just the DK Sportsbook either. Obviously, we have the DFS side of things, and naturally with the captain option or whatever, however you want to fill out your utility for a lot of contests in the DraftKings lobby. If you are fixated on Game 3, who's the difference maker in this one? Waylon, start us.
Yeah, I mean, if we're excluding Curry and Tatum, who we, of course, expect to play well, even in their bad games, there's still going to be decent DFS options. And honestly, Jaylen Brown, has kind of reached that level over these last couple series. I'm kind of looking in that upper mid-range. Is it going to be Al Horford? Is it going to be Klay Thompson? Even Andrew Wiggins, who I thought was really good, kind of as this like energy guy in Game 2. I think he only had 6 rebounds, but it felt like he had like 15 rebounds, the way he was flying around, kind of always at the rim. I like Klay Thompson to bounce back at some point. I listened to a ton of NBA podcasts, and there's a lot of people that are really down on Klay Thompson. And I know he was terrible in Game 2. I think he was 1 of 8 from 3. But on the whole, I mean, for these playoffs coming into the series, he was 20 points per game, 46% from the field, 40% from 3 on almost 10 attempts per game. I mean, that to me, that sounds a lot like old Klay Thompson. And I think he's going to wake up at some point in the series. He's not going to have another game where he's 1 for 8. All those looks were pretty good looks. Those are going to continue to be there. As great as the Celtics are at running teams off the three-point line, it's Golden State. They're still going to generate looks. They're such a tough team to guard. So I can't guarantee that it comes in Game 3, but one of these next few games, we're going to get a Klay Thompson game where he's like 6 of 9 from 3 midway through the third quarter. So if we're talking DFS, you're trying to gun for first place in one of those showdown contests. Klay's a guy that I'm going to roll with tomorrow night.
Fryer, you want to offer a Celtic, or you like one of those 3-time champs also?
Yeah, I know I've been pretty Celtic heavy today, but honestly, I just feel that good about them going into this game, and that's why Marcus Smart is the guy who I wanted to highlight. He's 11.7K at his captain's price, 7.8K on the utility, and he missed a couple of the games that the Celtics played following their losses in the postseason, but in the 4 games that he has played after a Celtics loss, he scored at least 18 points each time out and logged either 7+ assists or 7 rebounds every single time. So this is a guy if you're trying to put a mid-range guy at that captain spot, I think he's your best option too, because he's immensely versatile, and he knows how to help this team respond every single time. So for me, Smart's my guy. I know Horford, Nick's talked about him a little bit. I do think he's a worthwhile play as well, but I think Smart, when he comes to these kind of bigger moments where there's kind of a little bit of a buildup and everything, he ends up stepping up.
When I think versatility, I think Nick Whalen and Nick Fryer. Guys, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, obviously, and enjoy the game tomorrow night if we don't talk beforehand. We're going to step aside here on The Sweat. When we come back, time for a little golf. Jason Sobel, Jeff Ulrich, they will join us and tell us what the heck the LIV is. Stay tuned. Back here in the Sweat, Golf Talk. Normally we'd be fixated on the PGA Tour, but the PGA Tour is competition. Jason Sobel from the Action Network, you see the tweet. Dustin Johnson announced that he is the latest LIV or LIV golf player to resign in quote marks from the PGA Tour membership. That is, in an effort to avoid any future discipline. Kevin Na is a guy who's thinking about that. Others have already made that jump. We'll break down all of it here as Sobel, the aforementioned, he's going to pop in, join us here. Jeff Ulrich as well. Guys, welcome. It's good to see you. We're obviously going to get to DK Sportsbook and look at the RBC Canadian Open and all of that good stuff. But we got to begin with what is happening right here with this new Saudi-backed LIV League and, of course, the PGA Tour and the relationship maybe not so friendly between the two. Let's begin with you, though, Jason. I mean, what do you think of this thing and the players that are jumping ship from the tour?
Oh, boy. How long do we have? This is...
You have 30 seconds.
There's a lot of moving parts to this, and there's a heavy dynamic in what has become a very rapidly changing golf dynamic right now, golf landscape. And so, essentially, what we're saying, this is not about growing the game. I see a lot of fans saying, I'm not into this. This is mostly players in their 40s who are at the end of their careers, who are taking great gobs of money to go out and play this other tour. I'm not that interested. And my answer to that has been, this isn't about you. This is about them. This is about the Saudi Arabian through the Public Investment Fund, which is the Saudi Arabian government's money. This is about them changing the wording, changing the phrasing of what people believe about their government. When you hear Saudi Arabia, they want you to think, oh, that's the place that runs the golf league. It has all these big time golfers that are playing over there. It's about changing their messaging. They have tons of money. They're throwing it at players right now. This is not about trying to grow the game or trying to grow the sport or trying to even grow their own tour. So that's where we're going to start. As far as the other thing, I mean, Dustin Johnson, Kevin Na, Sergio Garcia, a few other players leaving the PGA Tour. Essentially, from what I understand, this is about them leaving the PGA Tour so they're not subject to disciplinary measures like a suspension. And then if they're still qualified for major championships, being able to play those major championships because they're not suspended. There's a whole lot of catch-22s going on in here. I'm not sure we have enough time to get through every part of what's happening right now, but that at least scratches the surface a little bit, Adam.
I believe, Jason, it was you who tweeted in the last couple of days about how the one big complaint for this LIV League is that their events don't actually have event names. So we just have to say, oh, well, the first event. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this first event that I guess is unidentifiable?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one offshoot of this, and I mean, look, Jason's right from the backstory perspective of this, absolutely. I think it will have an effect just on how the golf landscape, the professional golf landscape looks, and like it's changing rapidly. It's going to be changing week to week. I think it's going to have effect on how the PGA Tour does business as well eventually. But, one thing we are going to get is multiple golf events going off on the same week with professional golfers, former PGA Tour guys now, and Dustin Johnson, Kevin Na, you see the odds up there. I think that when you're approaching this event, I mean, you have got to think this is just wide open. I mean, this thing is going to be, who knows what's going to happen. I mean, obviously Dustin Johnson is a plus 400 favorite. He's clearly the best player in this field, but we don't know anything about the course. How are guys going to react to the 54-hole format? How are guys going to react to having $4 million up the grabs? Is somebody down below just going to absolutely come in and just with some swagger and freewheeling and just shoot the lights out? I think that when you're looking down, you've got to take a look at some of these long shots. Andy Ogletree, really high-end amateur at one point in his career, hasn't gotten on tracks as a pro, but could he just come in and do something like that? Some of these European Tour guys, they've competed against fields like this their entire life, just without Dustin Johnson in it. They could absolutely get hot. I mean, guys in like plus 4,000, like Adrian Ortega. So Richard Bland. It's an event where you should definitely have some interest as a golf bettor. I just don't think that looking at the top of the board is going to be helpful at all. You should be looking down probably in the plus 3,000 and down below. And don't be afraid to take a shot with some of these guys you haven't heard of much, because some have been really good over in other tours in other parts of the world.
We got three guys looking ahead to the RBC Canadian Open. Three guys in triple digits in terms of their odds in the DraftKings Sportsbook. The world number one, Scotty Scheffler, PGA Championship winner, JT, Justin Thomas, and of course the defending champ here, Rory McIlroy. So Jeff, let's stay with you on this one. Which of these guys do you like the most this week?
I mean, I'm not going to bet any of them at this number because it's the week before major and it's a Canadian Open and it's just a quirky little course where I think you could see someone go to like 25 under. But if I'm taking one guy, I'm gonna stick with Rory McIlroy here. There's two ways to look at Rory. It's disappointing. He hasn't broken through. He keeps letting us down on Sunday in the majors, whatever, I guess. But this is also a player who's he just keeps knocking at the door. He's so close, it feels like. And don't forget, like a couple weeks ago, Justin Thomas was in a bit of a similar situation. Like he hadn't won in over a year. It just seemed like forever. And like he's just getting close. He was playing well, but he wasn't quite getting there. And he broke through and won. This is also kind of an important week for Rory. Like obviously these guys want to win every week, but with the Live Golf Tour starting, Rory's been very vocal against going at it. Now he's at the opposite event, the PGA Tour hosting an event at the same time as the Live Golf Tour. Wouldn't it be cool if Rory just came in and blew the doors out and say, hey guys, have fun competing over there. The real competition is here. So I look at Rory. Not only does he have the best odds, but to me, he's got the most motivation and he's just really close. So Scheffler and Thomas, you could say it's more of like a warm-up event for them. I think it's a bit more serious for Rory this week.
Be a good time too, Jason, for whoever wins this thing. More overtures from the Live League, more money getting thrown their way to the winner. What do you think of Rory, JT, and Scheffler?
Yeah, so I'll preface this by saying I'm essentially fading these guys who are such short money this week. I'm going to look deeper. It's already been a very strange week. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets even stranger for a lot of different reasons. And, oh, by the way, I wouldn't put it past the PGA Tour to sort of persuade these guys, these top-name players, hey, we've got something else happening in another part of the world this week. We need your presence at the RBC Canadian Open, even if these guys aren't fully vested in what's going on. So I will take a guy at the top if I have to take one of those who needs a victory, who is vested in what's going on. That is, like Jeff said, Rory McIlroy. I think it would be a nice little parallel to what's happening in Live Golf this week. If Rory, like Jeff said, very vocal against what's going on and says he's not that interested in even watching it, let alone ever joining them over there. I think Rory is a nice play. He needs the victory more so than a Scheffler or a Thomas. He won this event, granted, a completely different golf course, but the last time they played it 3 years ago, going into a U.S. Open that week as well. So, he's the play for me if I have to take somebody from this range.
All right, well, you don't have to, Jason. You could take a little look-see at maybe the next tier below, plus 1,000 to plus 2,000. You got a handful of guys. You can see them on the board here. Cam Smith, a recent winner. Sam Burns, plus 1,600, took the Charles Schwab. Matt Fitzpatrick. Shane Lowry, same odds as him. Tyrell Hatton is right there at 20 to 1. Who do you like from that group, if anybody?
I like Shane Lowry and Matt Fitzpatrick. I've already bet both those guys for next week. I really like them for the U.S. Open next week. Again, these numbers are just too short for what I see this week at this event. I'm looking for guys with bigger numbers next to their names. I'd rather take a shot on a guy who's not quite in form, on a guy who doesn't have the same skill level, same talent as some of these guys at the top, but I'll take a shot on them with bigger numbers as opposed to getting these guys at anywhere from 10 to 1 to 20 to 1. They're fades for me this week. But again, Lowry and Fitzpatrick next week when we get up to Brooklyn.
You have a pick there, Ulrich?
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar to what Jason said. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to be betting anyone in this range, although I'm going to stick my neck out and say that, like, I'll probably have a piece of Matthew Fitzpatrick in some way, shape, or form this week, whether it's at plus 330 for a top 5 or plus 1,600 for the outright. Obviously, the plus 1,600 is pretty hard to swallow, but here's the case for him. He missed the cut last week. He struck the ball fine. He lost 7 strokes putting. Matthew Fitzpatrick probably has never lost 7 strokes putting in his life. You also look back at his record this year. He's missed 2 other cuts prior to last week. He bounced back from those missed cuts with top 5 finishes. So that actually, leads me again to like thinking he's probably a good top 5 play. He's really done. He actually struck the ball well. And now he's coming to a much easier golf course where, the greens aren't going to eat him up. It's more target golf. You look at where Matthew Fitzpatrick has done some of his best work. It's in some of those easier courses, more technical courses like, the Omega European Masters on the European Tour comes to mind where he's won twice. I think that, St. George's Golf and Country Club actually going to set up fairly similar. So Matthew Fitzpatrick is the guy who's been knocking on the door all season. He was in the contention at the PGA just like a few weeks ago. He's at multiple top 10s, top 15s. I actually think he could come to this event just start rolling off the top if the putter gets going again, and he could just take off too. So I think Matthew Fitzpatrick is a guy you should be looking at in the outright. Obviously, the plus 1,600 is pretty hard to recommend, but I would not be shocked if he won, and he's my favorite play, at least in the range we're talking about right now.
Hey, Jeff, in the same way that it's been, 3 decades since a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup, it's been since 1954 since a Canuck took this tournament. That was Pat Fletcher. I know, it's a transition for you. You got a bunch, though, available to you in this tournament. You got Corey Connors, Adam Hadwin, Mackenzie Hughes as well. Do you have a favorite bet on the DK Sportsbook? It could be a top 5, top 10, prop, whatever it is.
Yeah, so for me this week, I'm going to go with Adam Svensson as kind of my target. I really like the setup here for Svensson. Again, we've got a very just like a quirky little course where iron play is going to be a big thing. I don't think the around the greens play is going to be very difficult for these guys. It's a bit of an older course, but we're also going to get some wet weather, which means the greens are going to be receptive. Svensson hasn't quite been as locked in as he was at the start of the year, but he's also made 3 cuts in a row. This is a guy who had success at the Honda, another kind of target golf course. I think Svensson for like a top 40 play is very interesting. You can get him for top 40 at plus 170. You can get him at top 20 for plus 500. You can even get him for a top 10 at plus 1400. Am I expecting Adam Svensson to come out and win this event? No, absolutely not. But as a placing bet, it does seem like his odds they're pretty big. For a guy who's coming into his National Open, he's made 3 cuts in a row. And I think he very much suits this golf course well. He's gained strokes putting in 3 straight starts as well. That putter just keeps getting even just a little bit above average. I think you could see an uptick from him this week. So Adam Svensson going to be my placing bet, and the main Canadian I'm looking at for things like top 20, top 40, and even top 10. Jason,
favorite bet on Canadian golfer this week?
First of all, I will make a point that Jeff is onto something there with the top 40 bet. Those are really nice bets this week. We talk about Justin Thomas, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy in the field. This is as top-heavy a field as you'll ever see. So just because we have some superstars doesn't mean that this is a really good field. This one goes way deep down the priority list. And so you've got a lot of guys who just don't play PGA Tour events on a regular basis. We've got a whole bunch of sponsors exemptions, a lot of Canadian players who are given these exemptions. So if you see a guy, Adam Svensson's a great example, a guy who's a pretty good PGA Tour player who's had some nice finishes on the tour this year. Top 40s are really nice plays this week because there's just not a whole lot of depth. That said, I'm going Canadian chalk. I know it's going to be very chalky to go Corey Connors, who I think is one of the better iron players in the world right now. I've been waiting for him to win a second time on the PGA Tour. I'm not sure he goes necessarily that far, but a top 10 on him. And Adam Hadwin's been surprisingly good, sort of flying under the radar this year. I get it. They're the 2 best Canadian players out there right now, and I'm going chalky, but I do think they both have the best chance of contending this week.
We're just looking at it on the screen. You see it right there. There's some long odds on some guys this week. But ultimately, if people just want to bet the winner, guys, Jason, will go to you. Who is going to take the RBC Canadian Open?
For me, Adam, this is not a week where I say there's one guy I really like, and I'm putting my money on him, and he's my favorite outright. What I want to do is sort of take up a little collection. I want to bet a few different guys at bigger numbers. Sebastian Munoz is a guy that I like. Brendan Todd, C.T. Pan, maybe Aaron Rye. And then I'll go my favorite outright play. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean I think he's going to win. I just want to have some investment in Justin Rose. I just think 80-1 is way too big of a number for a guy who knows how to win. And again, we talked about Rory McIlroy, maybe a little karma play this week. Justin Rose is a guy that a lot of people thought would jump ship to Live Golf. Maybe he gets a little reward for not only staying on the PGA Tour, but playing an event opposite the first Live event this week.
What do you say, Jeff?
I don't mind that Justin Rose call at all. Definitely his odds stick out. I'm going to go a little bit chalky just with my pure pick to win. Guys down in the board you could certainly look to, like Steven Yager, David Lipsky, a couple long shots I'll be on. But, I'm going to go with Matthew Fitzpatrick. I just feel like this player is too good, playing too consistently and really all facets of the game not to pick up a win. And I think him coming off the missed cut. And don't forget, in 2019, Rory came off a missed cut in Memorial, then won here on another shorter track. I think Matthew Fitzpatrick could replicate that feat, so I'm going to make him my pick this week.
All right. Hope everybody was scoring at home, writing everything down. But if you weren't, we're on YouTube. You can go back, relive this segment, and all of it, all the great knowledge coming your way over the course of this show. We're halfway home. Jason, Jeff, thank you very much. Baseball is on the way here on The Sweat. We've got basketball and golf behind us. Let's get into a little bit of baseball with a couple of DK contributors, Steve Buchanan and Gary and Thornton. Thank you for being with us, guys. And it's always competitive when you two guys are at it. Right now, you got a best-of-7 series going on, going head-to-head, looking down deep at what week by week is going. And right now, Steve is up 2-0. You can see it was almost a clean sweep, Gary, and last time around. I know this is technically thorn in my side right now as opposed to put up your bukes. But, I mean, you're going to have to step up if this is going to be your segment.
I mean, you know, there's a lot of pressure. I think at this point, kind of just going into, like, security mode, don't want to get swept. That's the main thought here.
You got to play to win, not to lose,
give the
though.
segment back to Steve. You know, a lot of pressure running this segment. So, yeah, we got a lot on our plate today, but we're going to try to get better, Koff. We're going to try to get better.
All right, well, I'm going to at least defer to you. I want you to go first here, given that, you know, you got some ground to make up here in this set that takes place on Tuesday. So let's start at pitcher. What's the battle look like?
Well, I mean, I have to go first. That's how the segment works. So don't, like, give yourself the credit. I'm sorry. I'm just being
seriously.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what Steve would do. It's like
right.
Didn't have your Wheaties this morning or something?
Makes you.
He
Sorry,
does his show.
apologize.
Well, he does his show once a year. You know what I mean? Like, give him his moment, but he doesn't understand the rules.
Bukes, we really spoke yesterday.
I tried to erase that from my mind
That's
so
fair.
quickly.
That's fair. Go ahead, Gary.
I'm going to go with Tarik Skubal, who has been really just a revelation so far in 2022. We saw signs of him breaking out last season, but he's just been fantastic. His last 6 starts in particular, a 1.18 ERA. He's backing that up with a 2.22 FIP. He's less than $10,000 on this slate, which makes a little bit of sense considering the caliber of pitcher we have on this 12-game slate. There's a lot of good arms taking the mound tonight, but Skubal has not been walking anybody. That was a big issue for him last season. He's got a 5.9 strikeout to walk ratio so far this season. He's not given up any home runs, just 2 home runs across almost 60 innings in 2022. He was giving up more than 2 home runs per 9 in his career prior to this season. So he's gone out and fixed a lot of the issues that he had in the past, and it's benefited him greatly so far this season. Then Pittsburgh, just one of the weaker offensive teams we have in baseball, and across the last 2 weeks, the highest strikeout rate in baseball at 25.5%. So Skubal's upside tonight is off the charts.
10 walks in 10 starts this year, which is pretty ridiculous. But Bukes, go ahead. Tell us why your pitcher's going to be better.
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, here's the thing, too. Like, I got to be careful because, like, you know, if I win the series, then I got to, like, do all the heavy lifting. So, like, I might try to throw this week. But,
you worried about a
I
parade
think
or
these
something?
are still – yeah, I mean, these are still some good picks, though. So don't worry about that. But Jamison Tyone has been on a completely different level so far this season. This is somebody who's already had 2 Tommy John surgeries, and now he's looking like the best version of himself that we've seen. If you look at his numbers across the month of May, 31 1/3 innings pitched, had just a 2.01 ERA, a 2.53 FIP. He was just absolutely dominant when it comes in terms to fantasy points, at least 24 DraftKings fantasy points in 3 straight starts. Now he gets a Twins team that has been without some of their best hitters. No Carlos Correa still. Byron Buxton sat out yesterday. Should be back in the lineup here tonight. But this Twins offense has not been as good as we've seen them in the past as of late. So I think this is just another spot where Tyone just continues to roll as a Yankee starter here. He's really, quite frankly, been one of their best pitchers all season long. So I think he keeps it rolling tonight against the Twins.
Gary, and the one category you did take last time around was the infielder, not by a wide margin, but you did get it. So can you do it again here? Who is it?
I mean, I hope so, I guess, especially if Steve's throwing this. I should probably try and win it. Austin Riley. Let's talk about Austin Riley, who's $5,500 tonight. One of the hottest hitters in baseball, has been really just smashing opposing pitchers the last couple of weeks. And really, the height of Austin Riley's powers are when he faces a left-handed pitcher. This season across 72 plate appearances within the split, he's hitting .339 with a .212 WRC plus against southpaws. He's got a .458 expected WOBA against lefties in 2022. So few guys hit lefties as well so far this season as Austin Riley has. I think the price is decent considering, again, how hot he has been. And also Cole Irvin, the surface numbers are great. I mean, they're fine, I guess. The ERA's sub 3. This happened last season as well. He was kind of rolling along for a little bit being underwhelming, not striking anyone out, and somehow surviving, and then he hit a wall. And I think that wall is going to come tonight. His expected ERA is up over 5, 2 full runs higher than his actual ERA. I think Austin Riley is going to be a big part of the normalization of Cole Irvin.
Bukes, I like the games that you're playing right here because you say you're trying to throw it. So if you do lose, fine, you weren't trying to win. But if you win, good God, should Garion just be embarrassed? I mean, it's actually a pretty good strategy on your part.
You know, I've been here at DraftKings for about 8 years now, and you're just finally starting to catch on to what I do.
It's taken me
here.
some time, yeah.
Yeah, it's taking you a little bit of time. I'm not surprised. You're a little slow.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Trevor Story in this matchup against Reed Detmers. You know, the guy who embarrassed me on this segment a few weeks ago. But the only person who's embarrassed at this point is now Reed Detmers. He threw that no-hitter. What has he done since? Absolutely crapped the can. Since then, he's had 3 starts since that, quote-unquote no-hitter. 5.14 ERA, 6.57 FIP, and a 2.6 home run per 9 inning. He's been getting hit like we all expected him to be hit, when he threw that no-hitter. So it looks like it's a fluke now. But now you have Trevor Story, who has historically been one of the best hitters against lefties, and that has translated with him being out of Coors Field 100% of the time. You look at his numbers against lefties: 389 WOBA, 155 WRC plus. We all know about that historic run he had when he was hitting a home run every at bat, it seemed like, but he's still hitting well against lefties overall. I think this is a good spot for him and the Red Sox to jump on Detmers, who is obviously enduring some no-hitter hangover at this point.
I'm pretty sure the combined no-hitters are the quote-unquote no-hitters. I think he actually did it. He gets credit for that one, Steve. Good.
Okay.
All right. Outfielders, Garion, what do you think? Shut out there last time.
Yeah, I'm also going to pick on Reed Detmers. I mean, like Steve said, what's the worst thing that could happen? Is he's not going to throw another no-hitter. And if he does, we've got some freaky powers. So I'll kind of take that one too. JD Martinez has been one of the best hitters in baseball this season. And another guy, like Steve was sort of talking about with Trevor Story, where you don't just have to look at the 2022 statistics and go, oh, he hits left-handed pitching well. This is a large sample we're dealing with JD Martinez throughout his career, just crushing southpaws. He's got a 308 career batting average within the split, a 152 WRC plus. When you look just this season, he's hitting 433 against left-handed pitching. I mean, if Paul Goldschmidt didn't exist, these numbers would basically be leading the league against lefties just without any sweat, without any hesitation. Maybe Martinez hasn't been showcasing the power numbers we've been used to seeing, just 5 home runs so far this season. But I still think this is a really nice spot for him against Detmers, who, again, as Steve mentioned, has been struggling a lot since he threw that no-hitter. Regression hit him very quickly, as it probably should have.
I mean, thank goodness Goldschmidt does exist, though. He got you your win last week.
He did. That's nice.
How about an outfielder, Bukes?
Yeah, I'm going to be going with Kyle Tucker in this spot, going up against Chris Flexen, the only starter in the Mariners rotation we would like to leave. We like all of our Mariners guys. They're all teammates here, but Chris Flexen is not being a very nice teammate. All he's doing is losing games for the future AL West champion Seattle Mariners. That being said, he's probably going to lose the game for us again tonight as well, so we might as well just pile on him. So I think Kyle Tucker's in a great spot here tonight going up against him. You look at the numbers for Flexen. He's given up a number of home runs this season, mostly to righties, but lefties are getting him too as well. Has a 4.53 FIP against lefties on the year as well. So I think Kyle Tucker is someone that's going to go a little overlooked tonight. He's only 4,600, so he's affordable with some of the other guys that I mentioned too as well. So I think this Astros lineup has just been raking as of late. Obviously, they were lost because of Julio Rodriguez, your future American League Rookie of the Year, coming up right there. But they're going to get some revenge tonight against Chris Flexen, who we hope is out of the rotation soon.
Brings us to value, Gary, and dive deep. Who do you like?
Well, going back to that Astros lineup that we think is going to score a lot of runs, there's basically only one guy who is going to be able to supply any value for you on this slate, and that is Yuri Gurriel, who's just $2,700. Gurriel, not hitting great, I'm not going to lie, but he has been hitting slightly better so far in June. He is also going up against Chris Flexen.
Bukes, Garion's picks are suspect, but the ventriloquist skills are unbelievable.
Yeah, he's doing a good job. The connection is a little shaky because he's not able to afford internet right now because he keeps losing. So he's not able to pay his bill. That's what's happening right now. So I'll just go into My value play here
Please.
because I think Gary's back. You want to go back to him? He's back. Well, let's talk to Gary.
All right,
I mean,
Gary.
I've got perfect
Gary,
internet
finish your
here,
point.
So I don't know what everyone's talking about, but we will see what's happening.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I just think, like we talked about, Chris Flexen, not very good, specifically bad against right-handed batters. His last 5 starts, he's given up a 423 WOBA and a 351 batting average to the 81 right-handed bats he has faced. If you want to find any value in this Astros lineup, there's not a ton of options. So I think Gurriel at $2,700, even though he's having a terrible season. There's not a lot you can say positive about Gurriel, but this matchup is fantastic. I think the Astros are going to score a bunch, and he has a chance to be a part of the action at a sub 3K price point, which is not something you find a lot with the Astros.
Bukes, pivot right back to you.
Yeah, so I think this is a great spot for Trent Grisham. I think I used him last week. I can't be certain about that. But Grisham, for whatever reason, is hitting near the bottom of the Padres lineup. That's not usually something you want to target, someone who's hitting like 7th or 8th. But he has like really been hitting so well down there. I feel like it doesn't even matter at this point. Over his last 5 games, he has at least 8 DraftKings fantasy points in 3 of those games, topping out at 19. And this is coming from the 8 hole at that point. So 2 doubles in that game that he had against Corbin Burns and the Milwaukee Brewers. But Grisham going against Taijuan Walker, who you're just waiting for the impending implosion from Walker, who has been pitching well as of late. But anybody who's played fantasy baseball over the past few years know that this does not sustain with Taijuan Walker. So I think this is a great spot to target Grisham, who's going to have super low ownership because of how low he's hitting in the Padres lineup. But like I said, it really hasn't mattered because he's been doing so well in that spot. Maybe just, the less pressure in that spot is helping him improve his swing, but he's been a monster down there in terms of production from an 8-hole hitter. So I think he's in a great spot here tonight.
You went Albert Pujols last week, if you actually were wondering. I just figured I'd let you know. Favorite bet between the two of you guys. Gary and you start, and we're going to have to go relatively quick with this one.
Yeah. I mean, everyone can head over to Steve's Twitter account for the evidence on this one. But the worst run line team in baseball, the Kansas City Royals, and it's not particularly close. I'm going to take the Jays on the run line, -1.5. Brad Keller has been getting lit up his last 5 starts, 6.67 ERA. The Jays have the best offense in baseball across the last 2 weeks, and Alek Manoah is really good. So give me the Jays run line.
Bukes?
The Cardinals are +135 on the money line, fairly big underdogs against Jeffrey Springs and the Rays. They're one of the best hitting clubs against lefties. So I was a little confused about this line as them being underdogs at +135, even though Springs has a dazzling 1.88 ERA. His FIP is over 3. Give me the Cardinals in an upset here tonight at +135.
Bukes is seeking a commanding lead. See if you can go up 3-0. Tune in next Tuesday or just track the stats yourselves tonight. Either way, Bukes, Gary, and thank you. We're going to have NHL playoff talk on the way coming up. Well, you can see it. Our friends at DraftKings, we're DraftKings, tweeted out for the first time since 2001, I'll just add, when Boston threw a parade for Ray Bourque, the Colorado Avalanche will be playing in the Stanley Cup Final. Get ready. It's a good time. Welcome back here on The Sweat. Adam Kaufman, and more importantly, joined by our crew of NHL experts. We have Paul Bruno. We have AJ Scholes, both from RotoWire as well as NHL.com fantasy editor Anna Dua. Sorry about the whole, Canadian team not reaching the Stanley Cup final again.
Look, if you guys want to send Sidney Crosby up north of the border, we'll call it even. How about that, AJ? What do you think?
No, we'll keep him.
Okay.
We're
Then
good.
shut down the Canadian talk then.
Yeah, well, I know we're not going to be talking about your Leafs during this segment. The Avs, they swept away the Oilers. They're not headed to the Cup final. Does it matter, though? The Rangers, the Lightning, the two-time defending champs at that, are one of them going to come out, or do you expect Colorado, Paul, to lift Lord Stanley's Cup when all's said and done?
You know what? I think defense wins championships, and both Tampa and the Rangers will have an edge in that department over Colorado, regardless of which team makes it to the final. So I don't think it's going to be a walkover for the Avalanche. And they also will have some time off here, and I don't know how that's going to affect that team. But we've seen how it affected Tampa earlier in this series, and it's a different version of the Lightning that is rolling right now.
Anna, who's your favorite of the three that remain?
I mean, honestly, after the performance I saw with the Avs against Edmonton, it's Colorado's cup to lose. I mean, the big name players for Colorado really just came out blazing. Makar had that 5-point game in game 4. He has the 4th most points in the entire league this postseason per game with 1.67, and that's the most out of any of the skaters that are remaining in this postseason. And now I'm taking a look at Nathan McKinnon. We all know how great he's been, but his numbers are just so dominant. He has 82 shots on net in these playoffs, and the next closest player was Zach Hyman, who had 67. So he's by far the number one guy in that category. And even if you take a look past the big name guys that we all know and love on Colorado, like Mckinnon came out and had 6 points in this 4-game series against the Oilers. So this team has depth. They have a lot of depth. They can hold their own against either of the two teams that are coming out in the East, and they want to win this year. So it's their cup to lose.
Who's your favorite, AJ?
I absolutely agree with Anna. I think it's Colorado's cup to lose. And the fact that they might get Darcy Kemper back, he backed up in game 4 here, could be ready. Although at this point, Pablo Francouz has looked really good. I don't know that they'll want to, mess with things there. But Kemper should be healthy and ready to go. Now, the one thing I will say, and I've been saying it all postseason, until the Lightning lose a series, it's not necessarily the best bet to go against them here. So if they can come back from the Rangers, it may not be quite as cut and dry for Colorado here to just walk through one, but I think they absolutely should be the favorites.
We will get back to the NHL playoffs, guys. Big game tonight coming up. But in other NHL news, I'm not shocked. I'm mildly surprised just because a few weeks have gone by. It seemed like he could have been in the clear. Bruce Cassidy, he is out as the Bruins head coach despite 6 straight trips to the playoffs, including a trip to the Stanley Cup final as well. And this is a Boston team that's got so many questions, and bring back Don Sweeney as general manager. Brad Marchand, Charlie McAvoy, 2 of the better players there, are going to miss the start of the season with injuries. The captain, Patrice Bergeron, who also just had surgery, may retire and may not come back. And of course, as mentioned, they need a new coach. So, AJ, where does Boston go from here?
Well, I'm not surprised, first off, to see Emerson bail on hosting today, with all this Boston talk. He was probably crying.
Couldn't handle it.
Couldn't handle being on there. But look, I do think maybe the coaching change is a sign that Bergeron's not coming back, that they're going to go full rebuild here. And I do think the thing to watch is who they hire. If they bring in somebody that's maybe veteran coach like Barry Trotz, although he's been heavily linked to Winnipeg, somebody that could come in and coach like an NHL playoff caliber team right away, then maybe Bergeron's coming back. But if not, then maybe it's time to bring in an up and coming coach, restart the roster, that sort of thing. So I think the coaching hire will be pretty indicative of what we should expect to see in terms of retooling on the fly or rebuilding outright.
So, Paul, probably not going to be like a John Tortorella then.
No, it looks like a situation of 2 steps forward, 2 steps backward before they start moving forward again, rather. And I think the coaching change will indicate that in spades. I don't know that this was strictly a fire or was it a mutually agreed situation. I'd like a little more clarity there, but I can't imagine that Bruce Cassidy would tarnish his image. The guy's had a stellar record coaching this club and getting the most out of this group, and it just might simply be time to reload and rebuild here.
Well, I will tell you, Paul, Sweeney said this morning Cassidy did not take the news well, so it was probably pretty one-sided. Anna, what do you think? Where's Boston go from here?
I mean, there are tons of questions. And, you know, this is the tough part. I think we could all see this eventually come into this point. And it's difficult to see a team that you're so used to seeing being so dominant and having everything figured out get to this point. But it happens to every single club. And Boston definitely has a ton of questions in that department. But they do have some things to be excited about. I, for one, was super impressed by the performance of Jeremy Sweyman in this postseason. He only played 5 games against Carolina, but he had a good 4 out of those 5 games, posted above a .900 save percentage in those 4 games. So I like the way he played against a very dominant Carolina Hurricanes team, and that's a piece I would be excited about. They do have Charlie McAvoy, and so there are a couple of guys on this team who you could build around if you wanted to in the future, but I mean, they're on the verge of a teardown right now. I don't think there's a question about that.
Let's talk East Finals, guys. And Tampa trying to avoid, obviously, going back to New York down 3-1. It's not a literal must-win, Anna. We'll stay with you. But how important is this game in sunny Florida?
I mean, at this point, every game is a must-win, right? And the Lightning barely managed to get out of Game 3 with a win to get them at least one win in this series. So I think they really want to come out blazing in this game to tie it up a little bit more. I mean, when we take a look at the Rangers, one of the biggest things we've noticed, and we knew this going into the playoffs, was that Igor Shesterkin's performance would be a huge factor in the Rangers going as far as they have. And in Game 3, he's still made 49 saves on 52 shots, and he's just been dominant since that series against Carolina. But this is his first full postseason in the NHL. And so he's still pretty new to the scene. And we saw against Pittsburgh, there were times when he got rattled and it stayed with him for a little bit. So when we're getting this deep, you can't have those rattles and those questions stay with you as long, because it's going to have a way bigger impact. So if I'm Tampa Bay, I want to throw some questions around Shesterkin tonight, and I want to come out with everything I've got so that you could finally get the series tipping a little bit in your favor.
AJ, Bolt's going to even this thing up?
I think they will, and I think they have to. You know, part of it outside of the obvious, right? Like going back to New York, trailing 3-1 versus going 2-2 is a whole different ballgame. But we just heard from Coach John Cooper, if this thing goes to 7 games, they might get Braden Point back, and that would be a huge addition for them. So from that standpoint alone, extending this series long enough to get him back, bolster their top 6, give them a little more depth by moving some guys around, I think would be huge.
Pablo, who have you got?
You know what? As we get deeper into the series, it's about momentum and pressure. And those would shift back to the Rangers in one case and the Bolts in the other. Can you imagine going 2-2 and then the Rangers dressing room thinking, man, we had these guys down and had our foot on the throat in Game 3 and we let them off the hook. What did we do here? They may have released something that they won't be able to put the genie back in the bottle, I don't think. If Tampa ties this up, I think the momentum's all in their corner. And with the prospect of Braden Point coming back, that's another bullet in their chamber. So it's critical for the Rangers to send the series back home with a 3-1 lead. If they go back 2-2, I think they're in real trouble.
We only have time for one more. DFS captain for the showdown tonight, Rangers Lightning. Paul, right back to you.
With Tampa poised to tie the series tonight, I think I'd be tempted to go with Vasilevsky, who's due for a shutdown performance after surrendering 11 goals in the first 3 games, or maybe even look at Kucherov, who's been a magician with the puck distribution that he's been showing in these playoffs. But I'm going to go with their captain and top trigger man, Steven Stamkos. He comes into the game on a tear with 5 goals and 5 helpers in his last 10 games, 39 shots on goal in that stretch. He's going to be on the top power play option again and comes in cheaper than the other 2 guys. So captain him and add the other 2 later in their lineup to save some money.
Anna, your captain?
I mean, I think Stamkos is a great option. He was definitely the player I was looking at from the Lightning. But when we're thinking about captaining a player, I'm looking at consistency, and it's tough to argue against Adam Fox right now. He's on that impressive 8-game point streak in the playoffs, which is just unreal. 5 points in the first 3 games in the series against Tampa Bay, 5th most points in the entire league this postseason with 23. And, you know, regardless of how this game goes, Adam Fox is going to show up, and he's just a really reliable player to have in that category.
AJ, take us home.
Let's point out first, for some reason, Brian Elliott is the most expensive player on the slate. I wouldn't use him because he's not going to play. But I like the call on Vasilevsky, but I think instead I'm going to keep it simple. Nikita Kucherov, 14-7 is the price tag, 20 points in the postseason, 5 in the last 2 games. If the Lightning are going to win this and even up the series, it's going to be because Kucherov put some points on the board. So stick with him. don't overthink this one.
All right, we covered a lot. We learned a lot. We spent some good quality time together, which I appreciate as well. Want to thank our entire crew, both on the air and off, those in the studio, Samir, Billy, Matt, Cody, 2 Matts actually, and even a Jay. I'm Adam Kaufman. We'll be back with you again tomorrow. Make sure you check out the slate this afternoon after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim comes your way right around 5:15. And you also have The Sweat, 11 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. See you tomorrow.